John Piaget once said the essential functions of the mind consist in understanding and in inventing. Hello, my name is Taisha Palmer-Royal, and I am here to talk to you today about how effective cognitive learning is in schools. So I want you to think back to a time in school where you had to learn a concept. Like, it just clicked for you, it did something for you, you actually got it. So now I want you to think back to a concept that you did not understand and it did not click for you. So right now, teachers have that problem with students learning in schools today. So you have some that learn differently from others. You have some students that learn differently from others. You have some students who don't understand certain teaching styles, and you have some students who just don't grasp the concept at all. So cognition is actually defined as thinking about your thinking, thinking about what you're learning, and actually putting that to good use. So the key to cognition is increasing your skills in schools. So, for example, I am a psychology major. I study at Shaw University, and I am a senior. For some reason, I cannot pass one specific class, and you would think that it is a 400 level class, it is a high level class, but it is actually an introduction class, Introduction to Criminal Justice. I cannot pass that class to save my life. It's just something about putting one topic with another topic when it comes to criminal justice, because I want to be a therapist and not go into the field of actually working criminally. That is the biggest thing. Like, putting one concept with another concept is really big, and it's not just for me, it's not just for college level students. Preschoolers, elementary schoolers, middle schoolers, high schoolers, people who are in the work field, people who have great jobs, billionaires, trillionaires, millionaires go through the same exact thing. So we're going to dive deeper into the concept of cognition and the cognitive theory. So a theory on cognition asks learners to look at thinking and mental processes and how cognitive thinking can be influenced by external and internal factors. So one external factor that could affect cognitive learning would be a lot of people in class. Say you have a class with 40 students as opposed to a class with 10 students. A lot of our introduction classes at Shaw University have more students in the classes because it is a requirement for more students. It's a general education class, as opposed to a class like seminar in psychology, which has about 15 to 20 people in it. It's easier for us to focus, and you see the same faces all the time. So it's easier for you to get in tune with your classmates, in tune with your professor, because you're more than just a number. Internal factors would be things such as having a learning disability, such as dyslexia, or just something that makes you incapable of learning at the same rate as other students. Your cognitive process, if your cognitive process works normally, it is easier for you to learn. And as opposed, if your cognitive process does not work normally, that's when it makes it harder for you to learn and grasp concepts that are presented to you in class. So some psychologists that delve deep into cognitive theory would be John Dewey, William James, John Watson, and more notably known, John Piaget, who I quoted at the beginning of this TED Talk. Piaget is known for his development levels that break down ages and comprehension abilities. More psychologists have come over time, and things like things like the invention of the computer and things like that also have drastically impacted how we understand things cognitively. For example, learning on pencil and paper might not be as effective as somebody who is learning something on the computer. For myself, I love learning things by writing it out and writing it down. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I would say that how I learned and how I studied and things like that was more flashcards and more hands-on, as opposed to me studying on a laptop or reading something on a laptop over and over again. I'm a more hands-on, highlighting, writing down, taking notes type of person. But everyone is not like that. We just learned how to, the cognitive learning theory, we learned how to adjust it and adapt over time. The cognitive learning theory also goes hand in hand with the social cognitive theory and the cognitive behavioral theory. So the social cognitive theory is the idea that learning happens in a social context and is impacted by the person, environment, or behavior. That goes back to how a student is in class. So if a student is more prone to learning by themselves, being in a classroom setting probably is not the best thing for them to learn cognitively, because they cannot retain the information that is given to them, as opposed to someone who learns better in high level environments. So another example would be myself. I'm just going to keep referring back to myself because I know myself better than anyone else. So I learn and I do work better in high intensity settings. I am a full-blown procrastinator. I wait until the last minute to do a lot of things, and it doesn't always work in my favor, but at the end of the day, that's just how I like to work. But I know some people who like to take their time, and they work better in low intensity environments, and they work better over time. They can write a paper that was given to them a month ago. They can write it over a 2-week time span and a 2-week time period. But everyone does not work like that. The cognitive behavioral theory is the idea that how we think, how we feel, and how we behave are all directly connected to each other. So, for example, if someone feels like overwhelmed, or they feel like the environment they're in is not working for them, then they are more likely to perform less than a person who is more comfortable in their environment, feels better in their environment, and feels like they could work better in a classroom setting. I remember being at Shaw that Dr. Robinson's classes were high intensity with low intensity type of classroom environment. So high intensity being the workload is high intensity, the workload is there's a lot going on in the classes, but low intensity being there's only 15 people in the class. I don't feel overwhelmed by the amount of people in the class. The overwhelming part is the amount of work that is given in the class, which can also help us, which can also make us perform less in the class because of the amount of work that is given in the classroom. So some cognitive learning strategies. 1, ask questions. I know a lot of students don't like to ask questions because they don't like to be put on the spot. This goes for preschoolers all the way up into college students, all the way up until people are getting their doctoral degrees. Asking questions is the most essential thing that you could do to help with your cognitive intake, because if you don't understand it, then you're never ever going to be able to process it. So ask questions. Make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The best way to help with the mistake is to learn from the mistake, but you can't learn from a mistake unless you make the mistake. So self-reflect. You need to know yourself better than anyone else knows yourself. So if you know that you cannot perform and you cannot get the information as quickly as somebody else, then you need to go home and dive deep within yourself to make sure that you know what you need out of your cognitive thinking. Think out loud if you need to. Everyone does not think inside of their head. Sometimes you need to think out loud. Sometimes you need a partner. Sometimes you need somebody that's going to bounce your ideas off of each other. That's the best thing to do. So for teaching aspects, some things that teachers can do to make cognition or cognitive learning easier for students: make it into a game. we play a lot of Jeopardy games at Shaw. We play a lot of Kahoots and things like that. It gets competitive, but it's way easier to make something into a game so that people can understand it and people can grasp onto it. I know I do. I love Kahoot. I'm very competitive. But at the end of the day, I want to be on top, so I'm gonna need to know the information. Make journal entries. Make students write journal entries on what they learned during the week. Make students demonstrate what they know in front of the class. I know for seminar psychology, we all had a chapter that we had to do to make sure that we understood what was going on in each chapter. And it also helps when it's coming from your peers to see, okay, they got it and they're teaching it a different way than a professor would teach. So some things just to go back on. Cognition is the way of thinking, the way we think about thinking. So just remember that. Remember, teachers, to always make it fun for students. Students, remember to ask questions, make mistakes. Just take what you need to know and learn from it in school. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.